Welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. We're your hosts, Lauren and Yiannah, and this week we are joined by another soul contract practitioner for a deep dive of the 8-8 energy. Welcome, Kelly Koch.
Hi, thank you both for creating this awesome podcast. And we both have such beautiful souls, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you for
Oh,
being here.
thank you. Well, in
Yay.
addition to being a soul contract practitioner, Kelly is also an energy healer using divine healing as well as light language and crystalline soul energy or soul healings, and is also a massage therapist, craniosacral and somatic emotional release therapist. And it's actually
Yay.
very fitting what you do for your business.
Yes.
Because within the business energies, the 8 is so perfect for what you do. So without further ado, let's really get into this 8 frequency. So one of the big things with the 8 is it's known for being a very high frequency soul who comes down to earth with the goal of creating heaven on earth. And what can happen is that for people who have this number, this energy, especially in their karma, that they end up feeling very trapped here. Because the way that I always think about it and explain it is I'm like, think about it. You're this high frequency soul, and high frequency meaning like you may not have even incarnated into a physical body in a long time. Maybe you've never been a human before, especially. And you're in this very high frequency. There's no emotion, there's no physicality, and you come down to earth and it is dense and it is heavy and it is emotional, and you're just like, WTF, I know I had this goal, but this is a lot, get me out of here. But the 8s, they are the most physical number in this system. They are very grounded, and this number ties you here on this earth plane. So that I think is maybe where we can start this conversation. And I'd love to hear where, I think we all have 8 somewhere in our names. Where does it show up for us? Because yeah, a lot of the time, high frequency soul, but feeling very trapped here. So where does 8 show up in your chart?
Mine shows up in a karmic position. So it's in the physical karma or challenges, but how I do experience these numbers, although I appreciate the structure that we were taught, I have experienced them just differently, like how they're kind of like meld in, and that linear timeline of like the spiritual or the physical to the spiritual just that's not resonating as much with me anymore. I just kind of feel that this just the frequency of the number, and take it from there, too. But I do love the system that we were taught and use it still, but I also have that not that same timeline. It doesn't just that's not how I experience it. So, but definitely it's in a challenge position. So yeah.
How does it show up for you? Do you feel like you have experienced any of those challenges of the 8?
Well, I think since I have embodied the 8s, I feel like that has brought on my talents even more. I think with the 8s being embodied, it's brought on my talents of truth and trust. So even though I have experienced some of the negative stuff we'll probably get into, or the challenges stuff of the 8s, I feel like since they're embodied, I can then therefore share my gifts and trust, and then speak my truth even more, because the 8s are grounded. And that the symbol of the 8 is that amoeba, being able to adapt and mold to situations in our environment. So I really feel like the 8 frequency is such a binding number for, and it helps all the numbers. Well, it really does. It does bring out the talents once embodied. And it does, also the Hebrew of it is that essential life and transcendence. So the essential life of, connecting to your emotions and being able to share with people and connect with people. And then the transcendence of it is grounding, bringing that spiritual energy down into the physical, and maybe not so linear concepts, and understanding who we are as humans in this 3D form. So I agree with you, Lauren, on all the dense, stuck feelings, but once embodied, the eights are amazing.
Yeah.
Where are they for you, Yanni?
They are
Yiannah?
actually in my spiritual karma.
Okay.
And actually, when I look at all my names I've had throughout my life, and even my optimized name now, I actually have it in goals, but it's all over. And the thing is, that trapped feeling that Lauren talks about, for me, that shows up as feeling alone. You feel different. You feel like you can connect with people in like a soul driven way. Like you have lots of friends, but you still feel alone. And it's different than lonely. And when I actually started doing some inner child work, this was probably in the beginning of the year, every memory I went back to, whether I was surrounded by people or not, I always felt alone. And I was like, well, that's weird because I don't feel lonely or like I'm lacking, right?
Yeah.
And then I did a past life regression with somebody we've had on the show. And we went through so many lifetimes. And in each lifetime, whether I was in this beautiful marriage or no matter what it was, the general theme was that alone. I've always just felt alone. And I was like, oh my God, these eights are like way stronger than I even expected. But what's so beautiful about that is it comes with that self-worth piece.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one of those where once you really start to accept and understand who you are and really value how amazing you are, it's like because the eights feel like they don't have, like they're not home, right? Because they don't incarnate often, they feel that different, they feel that disconnection. Once you actually start to put in that work and that self-love within you, your home is within you. You feel that. And then what happens is you start attracting and like kind of finding yourself in a space where you have found your tribe. And I remember when I had that moment, which was also this year, and it was like very like whatever I was doing, everything stopped me in my tracks. And it was like, you are finally like, you finally have arrived. Because the eights, they also will, they can experience in a challenging aspect really severe depression, right? I don't want to be here. I want to check out. But it's like we are meant to work through that. We are not meant to check out. We're meant to just stick it out, figure out what we need, pour that love into ourselves, and like progress within that frequency and in our lives. Luckily, I have never experienced any type of depression like that. But I have experienced the feeling alone and the feeling different and feeling like people just don't get me. And I am a chameleon, like that chameleon eight energy who can relate to anybody. But yet, for most of my life, I have still just felt that I'm by myself, you know?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to when growing up, my dad had 6 eights. So I didn't really feel ungrounded, or I did have trauma. I didn't escape that, but I was really lucky enough to have that growing up, even though it kind of turned up in my 20s too, like feeling the ungroundedness. But you know, our souls are organized and they're going to give us the experiences that they need this lifetime to ascend, if that's what this our incarnation is about for us, you know. I really feel like that the trauma piece with the eights I see a lot when I'm doing readings. And I guess one people might with eights might not even know that it is trauma. What do you girls think of that, or what do you guys think of that?
I mean, I don't know that because I've definitely have spoken to people who have had those very, deep depression. Like I have someone close in my life who I knew before ever knowing the system that they had depression. And, so when I kind of was talking to them a little bit about their chart, I was like, well, I know that you have this depression. Have you ever had these thoughts, and they were like, I can't believe that you can see this in the chart. They were so
Mm-hmm.
blown away. Um, in terms of the trauma though, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've had that experience with the eights where they're not knowing that it's trauma. Not that it can't show up that way. I think for the people though that I've done readings for, they're more aware of it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
about Yiannah, what you've shared, where you've seen that happen for people with fives. They don't
Mhm.
even think about, some of
I
the
have fives too.
difficulties.
Yes,
So,
well,
Yeah.
so I was like,
it's because
yeah,
the fives will, because they're optimistic, they're like, well, everybody has hardships and everybody experiences stuff, and it wasn't that bad. But then when you like peel back the
yes,
onion, you're like, the fact that you're even saying that is miraculous. So it
yeah.
is like that. I think that whole trauma piece too plays very much into the fact of like, well, what does the whole chart look like?
Right.
You know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's where I find that it's easy for me to look at my life with all the numbers that I was given and be like, I see exactly where this is going, and see why I had that experience then and wasn't ready to maybe, heal that part of it then, or was it, so I can see where having the sevens, even something I may say today, somebody might not even know in my whole, like might not know that I've known my whole life, might not even have ever heard me say.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the beauty, and that's why I feel like the experiences with the chart aren't necessarily the spiritual and physical, aspects of
Right.
it. I feel like
Yeah.
they do
The
kind of,
division. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It
yeah,
tells you a story. When you're looking at
exactly,
somebody's chart, you're looking at an entire story.
exactly,
And just because the eights do experience depression or do experience, not being able to feel their feelings or process them, they hold on, doesn't mean that everybody will
exactly,
experience that same thing. And that goes into play with, where is this frequency in your chart, but what are the rest of the energies that are playing out for
yeah,
you? Because
yeah,
for me, I do have that five. So while the eights have trouble feeling their feelings, my sensitive five is like, don't look at me sad because the waterworks are going to start and I feel it all. Where like
yeah,
one of the main things about the eights is they hold all their emotions up here.
yeah.
They have a tough time processing because they hold everything, and they're like, if I don't feel it, almost like it doesn't exist, it'll go away. But what you're doing is you're just bottling it up.
Well, that too, and that's why the eights are so involved in everyone else's life. Because if I can get into your stuff, then I don't have to feel my stuff.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, like that's like I've seen that with eights in readings too, like being overly involved in other people's or wanting to fix their problems, and as a healer and as a practitioner, maybe it's just a pitfall of the being a healer is wanting to fix or wanting people to feel better, but it's really actually about me just allowing the information to flow through me and help them. Their higher self is going to deem what healing needs to take place at the time, and my belief that healing is always happening is going to hold true. So whether they feel better or worse after a session is totally up to their higher selves. So
Mhm.
having an 8 in a challenge position, that was a really quick lesson that I learned probably 19 years ago, really fast, of really needing to, I'd get triggered when someone say, you need to fix my shoulder, because I come from a very therapeutic, anatomy-based massage. So I was getting a lot of physician referrals and stuff where people would come with, pretty serious injuries or and in pain, and then like, you need to fix that. So it got really and then it just hit me really hard, and I learned great early in my career that like, okay, like I can not fixing anybody, you know what I mean, and have that mindset of going into it and really knowing. Then that's when I did learn about my chart, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense of that,
Yeah.
you know, that need to fix or to want to fix people.
And you know, the eights, they are Cancer within astrology. And so I think
Yes.
that's where, for those who are familiar with astrology, right, is this very maternal, very protective, very caring energy. And there's a lot of that frequency of the eight, you can really see that correlation, right? And so that's where I see some of that fixing comes from, right? Because it's like you can see
Yes.
that of your mom friends or of your actual mom who just wants to fix things and all of that. And it's beautiful. And you know what? My mom does that too. And she also has eights in
Does
her
she have
chart.
eights?
So it's like, is it the eights or is it just her being a mom? But it is one of those things. Like I think we probably all have things for us, you know, that when you're just talking to someone on the street, they say something and you're like, do you have this number? And that's one of the things when someone says, oh, I'm just always trying to fix other people's stuff, or this partner told me, you know, I need to just not try to fix it as much. And I'm like, I bet you have eights, because
Right.
that's the issue, you know, that's the lesson that's going on there. And that is part of what they're having to learn, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the other general lesson, which is boundaries, right? So that sense
Yes.
of like you're talking about getting into other people's business. I want to fix it, usually very well intentioned and well motivated, right? From it's
Mm-hmm.
very caring. I want you to be okay. So I want to just fix it. But
Right.
also the point that you make is I can like skip over my own stuff by helping to fix yours. Totally part of it too.
Right.
And then there's just that general sense of the boundary. So it's like whether you're trying to fix people's problems or not, there's just this very loose, mentioned the symbol already, that amoeba, right? That's this very loose membrane. So the difference
Mm-hmm.
between you and kind of the water that you're in, it's this very loose, no boundary, right? It is not this hard shell exterior like the crab would have. It's the, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Anyway, it flows.
It flows, exactly. And
Yeah.
that too leads to another challenge of the eights being the like not wanting to commit.
Yes.
Right.
I didn't get married until I was 36, you know, so like my trust needed to be wasn't there, you know what I mean? So with other people, so I feel like until I did body work and really released a lot of the trauma and energy work, releasing trauma and releasing and allowing myself to heal, um, I think that too, like, oh, okay, like I'm ready to commit to, you know, to this relationships. And still too, like even I see it, the good and the bad. Like sometimes I still, eights have that trouble of discernment between like good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, or light and dark. I even have done that in a job. Like a year and a half ago, I just got out of a job where I was like, oh, this is a great job. Like I was there. And then I was like kind of there for, you know, a couple more years. And I was just like, ooh, you know, like, oh, that was triggering, but never mind. It's okay. You know, like that's okay. They still really, you know, care about me. And then it was like after 5 years, I'm just like, okay, I got to get out of this. This is not a good spot for me to work, you know? So it's,
Yeah.
I still feel that sometimes. And so with that, I have to trust my intuition, you know, like as soon as I get that hit that it's a no, like, okay, let's go get curious about this no that I just received, because I know that I have in my chart that I sometimes can't tell good from bad right away, you know, like,
And
and I
that's a
do see that.
and that's a bit of that romanticizing energy, right? The eights, they romanticize everything. And so when they
Yes.
do get that new job, they're like, oh my God, this is the greatest job. The people are so kind. Or when you get in a relationship, you're like, oh, the parents, the family, they're amazing. And then it's like time kicks in, and then you're like, oh, well, here are the flaws. And it's
Yeah.
not as perfect and fairy tale as I thought it was. And then you're like, oh shit, like you self-sacrifice yourself because
Right.
now you're in this situation and you can't help but just like overgive. And then
Hmm.
you find yourself in a situation where those boundaries, not just overstepping them because you overgive, but your boundaries for yourself, setting your
Yeah.
boundaries becomes so important. And where that self-worth comes in is if I set my boundary here and you come in every day and your standards is much lower of how you're going to actually show up for me, and I'm not requiring you to meet this boundary, you're never going to step up to what I need on your own. Not you specifically, but in general, that's just how people are. So
Yeah.
you have to be the one that's saying, you know what, I'm sorry that I love myself enough to understand this is what I need. And if you can't meet me here, I wish you the best, but I got to keep it moving. But nobody is going to do that for you. You have to do that. And setting boundaries, I think, is so difficult for so
I
many
love that.
people, including myself. But at some point, you have to step into that self-love and go, I'm just as valuable and just as important as everybody else. Why should your needs trump mine? Why aren't my needs just as important as yours? And then when you step into that, you'll notice that shift. And some people will be like, I'm out of here. Because
Yeah,
they're like,
just
I'm not
will
living that.
follow the resonance with you.
Totally. And then you'll have the people who are like, you're right, I can absolutely give you the thing that you need. And you're like,
Yeah.
yay.
Yay.
Win-win.
Right? Yeah, that's awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that 8, it's very much that people pleaser energy, right? I see that all the time. And so for anybody who already identifies in their life as a people pleaser, you're probably like, yeah, very familiar with that boundaries, very familiar with all these conversations. And part of that is that asking for help, right? So the 8 is connected into, it's the right hand. But again, when you're in a challenge, so the right hand is able to offer out, to extend, to offer help and to receive help. But when it's in a challenge, that becomes, again, difficult. It's like, I always kind of picture it as if like your elbow is like a glue to your side, right? You can't reach it out. And it makes it, especially with the 8, I just really see them as those people who are pouring, 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 even from an empty cup, right? They're not allowing their cup to be poured into. Again, think about that mom friend energy or just a mom in general. It's going to give and give and give to other people. And partially it's like, who is showing up to give to the mom? When is she ever letting anybody in her life know that maybe she needs that help and assistance? But also that difficulty in receiving, in the sense of, even when someone is offering, it's like, oh, no, 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 I'm totally fine. I don't want to be I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a bother. So it's like, even when the help is like there at your door, it's like, oh, no, 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 I'm shutting the door in the face, right? It's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So that's a huge one for this number. And again, ends up, you're pouring from an empty cup because not allowing your own cup to be filled.
Yeah, or not even sharing. You're just withholding, the knowledge, or misusing that not even wanting to share your stuff with other people too. I think that can appear in the physical as well as the spiritual and emotional realms too.
Yeah. And what you're actually doing when you are not open to receiving is you're also telling the universe, I'm good. I don't need anything.
Oh,
And you know
good
what's really
point.
interesting? I have a girlfriend, and she told me something that her dad had told her years ago. And her dad had said to her, when you are like walking down the street and like, you know how people give out those like promotional products and swag and whatever. He goes, I don't care how big or small it is. You always take it and you say thank you, because what you're doing is if you keep saying no, thank you, no, thank
No,
you,
thank you.
you're telling the universe, no, thank you, no, thank you. And I remember being like, oh my God, I always loved your dad. And now I know exactly why. Like, he just got it. And it makes so much sense. But it's just one of those things where you don't connect those dots. But
That's
if you're not
funny.
open to receive,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And most of us don't even realize that we're not open to receiving, and
Right.
then you have these conversations and you're like, oh my God, I'm actually energetically blocking myself from being able to do that. And I had a girlfriend recently who wanted to give me something. And I'm like, are you crazy? And she said to me, she's also on her path, she goes, are you going to deny the universe from giving you a gift? And I was like, I see what you're doing, and now I have to accept this thing you want to give me. But it's true. I had a moment of, just remember, just be open, and the way you do for others, allow others to do for you. And it's hard, but just step into it. And because I know for me, that is one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with this frequency, allowing the universe to give. but I'm open.
Yeah.
I'm open to learn.
Yeah.
Not
I'm
too, or what, Lauren?
Oh no, no. Well, I was just gonna say for me, it's one of those things where, again, a lot of these energies can have crossover with other energies. So
Yes,
for me, having fours in my chart,
me too.
there's so much connected to that. So
Yes,
for me, typically when I do think about receiving generally in a more general sense, my mind does go to those fours that are in my
me
chart.
too.
But it's the help that when it comes to the being open and asking for help, receiving help, and that more specific sense of receiving, that's when I think about the eights and the 10-1, right? Because they both have
Yes,
those
have
themes.
that too.
And I have both of those
We all do,
numbers.
I
yeah.
And
know. Yeah,
yeah.
we have a lot of the same numbers.
And it's interesting because I really do see this difference even between the 10-1 with asking for help and the 8. And it's interesting that the 10-1 is associated, the 1 is the divine masculine. Now, the divine feminine is the 13, but we've already talked about the 8 is Cancer and this very maternal sign, a very sort of feminine energy. And so I even think in the way that they struggle with help, I kind of see differently in that way of the masculine versus the feminine, because the 10-1, it's like that perfectionism. I don't want to admit
Mm,
I couldn't do this alone. I don't want to admit that in my own view, I don't see myself of having been capable. And so I can't admit that, right? I can't say that. Versus again, that 8, which is the like, I'm going to give and give and give, and I never want to be a burden, and that people pleaser. So even though they both have that lesson, there's that different, kind of flavor
yes.
to that's going on, which I think is so interesting to
But
look at.
that's why I think the 8 is so amazing, is because of the emotional aspects of it, where we can
Yes.
then look at the totality of that. Okay, let's allow being our feminine, and then let's direct, take action, being the masculine. So I think
Mhm.
that 8 helps me that with that duality of emotion, and then sit in neutrality with everything, like, okay, I'm upset and that's how I feel, but like, then let's get curious and what's the opposite of that emotion, and then come into that full polarity of the emotions. I feel like the 8s are really an emotional number too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so then that whole emotion then connecting to the world, or connecting us to other people,
You
which
know, on that emotional side, I see it so much as like this blend of the 3 and the 5, which is kind of funny that those numbers add up to
yeah.
8, right? Because it's like the 5, Yiannah was talking about, the 5 is so sensitive. And the 8 also really does have a lot of emotion, but I think similar to the 3 is where it tends to be a lot more blocked off, right? The 3 is the
Mm-hmm.
depth, and emotion is blocked through that. And so the 8, what we see, again, that slightly different flavor, that slightly
Mm-hmm.
different slant, is that they tend to, and Yiannah, you kind of mentioned this already, right? They tend to think their feelings. They're very in their head. They need to move to their heart. But the connection, I don't think we quite drew. And I do want to kind of draw this line, especially for those new to the system and new to these energies, is that, at the very beginning of this, we mentioned the 8s feel trapped here. They want to exit, maybe, right? But part of that, if you think about 8, is very connected into the body, right? The physical form. And so what we see a lot is people are also disassociating. They're kind of not being present in their bodies. And so thinking your emotions is one way of not being present in your body, where we want to feel our emotions, but that can be really, again, scary and difficult, challenging, painful, especially if there is trauma and stored emotion that you've been, as Yiannah, you said, pushing down, pushing down, pushing down. When you really start to bring that up to feel it, oh my goodness, it's so overwhelming. I don't know about y'all. I love to watch like videos of like when drains have been clogged, like on
Oh
TikTok and things
God,
like that.
no.
No, and
No.
then oh my
Oh
God, they like
God.
get it cleared and it like rushes out. Oh my God, I love those sorts
Oh
of things.
God.
Yeah.
I love it where they like
I
put
love
like
you, Lauren.
they put the tire in through the pipe and they like drag out all the mud and then it starts to like gush. Well, it's like that. I mean, think about the power of rushing water, right? And
Yeah.
how once it starts to get felt, it's not like, oh, this was like a comfortable trickle. It was like a storm, and like that can
Yeah.
blow you over if you're not ready for it. So this is where I mentioned again as I introduced you, Kelly, with all of the work that you do, which is
Mm-hmm.
very much about connecting to people's bodies, helping
Mm-hmm.
them to get into their body, working with their body. That's why this 8 is so wonderful from that business energy perspective and
Mm-hmm.
representing what you do, because it's going to help people to get into their bodies. And that's really one of the most important lessons, primary
Yeah,
lessons.
I
Does
think,
depend everyone,
yeah,
but yeah, for the
I think
eights.
that 8 too, for me, and embodying the 8 is all about, and healing is all about empowerment. So empowering others to heal themselves is really all that I'm doing,
Right.
and I think,
Because
yeah,
we also know that healing doesn't, we can't heal anybody.
right.
Mhm.
We're the conduit that helps bring them
Yeah.
whatever needs to come, but only you can heal yourself,
Yep. I think
you
that's
know?
the I don't know if it's new, but empowerment is like the new
Yeah.
healing, like empowering others to connect to their emotions, feel in their bodies, ground to the dense earth energies, and create their heaven on earth. It's sounds that simple.
Well,
you know.
because here's the thing, one of my favorite things I actually love about the eights, is their connection to nature.
Yeah.
They love and they connect to nature, and I actually see it. My daughter has a soul destiny 8-8. My ex-husband had 7 8 8s in his birth name. Okay.
Wow.
When it comes to nature and animals, he and my daughter are just crazy for it. And he just know he's watched every documentary, everything you can think of. The way he connects with it is like magical. And when my daughter sees a dog, she's like, Mama,
Yeah.
do nice. Mama, she's only 2, right? Mama, do
Yeah.
nice. And if we're like walking and we're missing that dog and she doesn't get the opportunity to do nice to this animal, she gets so
Oh,
upset. She feels like she's missed out on this opportunity. So now I'm always like, every time I see a pet,
you're like,
a dog or someone's cat, I'm like, is it okay? My daughter really. And so she knows, to let them smell her hand and whatever. But both of them, they're like, I connect to nature, but the way they connect to nature is like wild. And it's so grounding when you're out in nature. That's what's
Mhm.
going to bring you into your body. That's what's going to ground your emotions. You want to get them from here to here.
Yeah.
And because the eights also feel, we know this, right? Every disease and ailment is tied to a mental emotional state that we're just suppressing. And
The
it's our body trying to
metaphysical.
say, hey, girlfriend, I'm going to give you this pain or this ailment so you can understand X, Y, and Z emotion needs to be like dealt with. And so I do find very often in my readings with clients that they've had lots of lessons through the body when there's an 8 in their chart, whether it's through giving birth or whether it's, yes, I've had this disease or this ailment, or I'm constantly battling this back pain, whatever it is. It's like all these lessons through the body. And as we heal, what we know is we're healing the body. And like, that's when you start to feel that at home, like I'm in my body and it feels so good. And we know that healing is a ripple effect. Oh, I did say it right this time. It's a ripple effect. You heal you and you're really impacting everyone around you. Last time I think I said trickle, something
Oh,
like it. Lauren, do you remember?
Forget. I
Yeah,
don't
it's like
remember,
something,
but
yeah. But you get what I mean.
yeah, we get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
what are y'all's tips then for, coming into your body or getting grounded? Like what has been the most successful for you?
I like that EFT, emotional freedom technique.
Yes. Yes.
I really like that. It's so simple,
Yep. Yes.
and then doing the,
Every day. And
yeah,
that
that
is
one
like
is good.
every day. It's so good.
I
And
like
like,
that one.
yeah, me too. I recently started doing that maybe over the last month or two. And you
Hmm.
notice whatever it is that's going through. And it's very much like divine healing, how we we reestablish a new positive belief system where we tap right here, but you just have different meridian points that and instead of like, it's like you're working through the whole problem as you're tapping and you're coming to that new positive belief system. So that is an excellent tool.
I like that one.
That is very nice. Also like baths, right? Especially with the eights and the water. Baths, they clear your energy, they release stuff, and who doesn't feel comfortable in a bath? Right? I feel like for me, like if I'm close to water, I feel good. When I see water, it's like my body just like feels at home. And I find that, you know, with eights loving nature, you need that. Or the mountains, right? You connect to that like external thing. But what about you, Lauren? Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like for me, my favorite form of exercise is just to go for a walk, right?
Yeah.
Like I just love going for a walk. I love, you know, when my heart rate is feeling a little elevated or something, it's always like, okay, go walk off this energy. And I have to say there was this one time, I think during one of the trainings that we've had, I don't remember which one exactly, but the energy was just so high around that time. And I'd been sticking around where it was like it was really hard for me to sleep. I had always just this like higher energy in me, and it was just like a little too much for my body. And they do talk about, you know, right? Like hug trees, connect to the trees. And I like hugged a tree and I was like, tree, please take this excess energy. I just like can't with it anymore. And like within instance, like this had been around for a week, and within instance, it was like, or within moments, it was gone. And I was just like, oh my God.
Love it.
Oh my God.
Letting
Thank you,
nature
tree.
heal you.
Yeah. So that was great. I love that. But also I really love, as more of like a modality, acupuncture. I went to an acupuncturist pretty regularly for like a couple of months, or I was going like every week. And it was just so nice because you kind of like meditate a little bit, and you just know, again, with the meridians, right? They're putting the different needles at the different points to help just balance your energy. So I love kind of those sorts of
I also like the Elmira's in her Divine Healing, her I think Nicholas has a resources on Center for Conscious Ascension website, the clearing other people's energies and the cord cutting. That's a really good one for me. That whole Ho'oponopono has been really helpful, and something that you can do for yourself.
Is it
like Bach flower remedies?
I'm sorry, I forgive you, I love you, I thank you,
Thank
something
you.
like that. Yeah.
Yep. You got it.
That is
And
beautiful.
flower essences are good too. Obviously, just knowing that if something doesn't work for you, like don't just cut it off and be like, oh, well, that's not going to work. Like trusting that you're going to find something that's going to help you through the situation too, or through the trauma, whether it be therapy, talk therapy, or, an energy healing, but really, giving yourself the opportunity to heal and allowing that release and activation to happen.
And I think knowing that like things happen on those spiritual levels. So there are a lot of times with a lot of different modalities that like, was I aware of anything happening really like in the physical world? No. And especially when I was doing the acupuncture, this was before I had my spiritual awakening. So I wasn't as connected into my own body yet, but like I would be able to hear him feel, oh, that feels a lot better. And you just kind of trust. It's like, okay, you're able to tap into something that I'm not aware of. And I kind of think of it like going to the gym also, right? You don't go to the gym one time and then you've lost 20 pounds. You know that it did something, even though it takes some time to see the result. So, it's all for, hey, you just didn't resonate with it. You don't want to continue to do it.
Right.
Totally fine. But sometimes for me, it's like, it's just the knowing that it did something, right? These are
healing
drops in the
always
bucket.
works.
Yeah.
Healing is always happening. You know what I mean? It's
So
usually
like
that last thing that people go to that they're like, oh, that was the thing. It wasn't the 17 other things they tried before it, and it's all that divine timing, like when you sometimes, our human selves see things, we work in linear time, like in our higher self doesn't work in that time frame. We work in the non-linear, so healing might take long to us or seem like it's taking long to us as a human, but it's that trusting.
Yeah. You know, it's
bringing
really,
on your force.
it's really funny. I have a girlfriend who is a great Reiki practitioner. And, you know, when you're getting Reiki, there are times you're sitting there and receiving the treatment and feeling nothing. And there are times you're feeling a whole lot of stuff. So she understands in her work, just like in the healing arts, some people are going to feel it and some are not. Well, then she actually went to this new chiropractor she was seeing who also works with energy. And I remember talking to her after, and I go to her, I'm like, how was your appointment? She goes, well, I don't know if he did anything because I didn't feel anything. And in that moment, we both started cracking up because she was like, oh my God, I just realized what I just said. I am like that client who's like, well, you didn't do anything because I didn't feel anything, when she knows that work is being done anyway. And we were just cracking up because it is, even those of us who do divine healing or do our own modality, whatever it is, when you're receiving, sometimes you just don't feel it. And
Yeah.
that's okay. You know,
That's
that
okay. I just had this
totally.
conversation around, like, do you have to feel something or be cognizant or bring it into the consciousness for it to be healed?
Right.
Like, you know, the old saying of you have to feel it to heal it, or
Yes.
the issues are in the tissues type. And it didn't hold water with me, and it doesn't. I got rid of that belief. It got brought up, I think, even in a divine healing, where it was like I had a belief that you had to feel to heal. And then I got it cleared, and I felt it clear. And so then I'm going about my healing ways, or, you know, doing my stuff. And then I was working with a healer, and he recently had said, well, you have to feel it and bring it to consciousness to heal. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I got rid of that belief, you know, like, because some people don't have the psychic senses to know that they are healing something from a past life when they were in Egypt, or it just doesn't make sense to me that you need to feel something that, like, it just doesn't make sense that you have to feel it to heal it, because sometimes you don't even know what you're feeling, or I don't even know how to describe it, but I don't have that belief anymore.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because a long time ago, I had basically set the intention or asked spirit, like, bring things to my awareness once it's been healed and cleared. Because otherwise, I'm the type of person, like, I'll get so nervous about it and so, like, I don't know, get
Mhm.
up in the, like, oh my God, this thing. Versus if I've set the intention, it only comes to my awareness once it's healed. Then I know, oh, this is coming up. It's done. It's taken care of already. Otherwise, I wouldn't know about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You just trust that you're going to receive the information and that you need. And sometimes, like, even in a session, like, I'm just like, okay, I'm not getting anything. But then, you know, like, everything's blank. And I'm just like, okay, you have someone in front of you and you're like, okay, everything is blank. But I'm trusting that the healing is happening, that the template's running, or whatever I need that I'm doing in, you know, with energy work is happening, you know, even though
Right.
my guides aren't showing me the information, and maybe I just don't need that information or maybe that person doesn't need to know the information for it to heal. So I just go with, you know, healing is always happening. And
Which is beautiful because I think so often we do get so, again, in our heads, right? That energy in our heads of like, if I'm not aware, if I can't tell you, then nothing happens. So it's so beautiful that you do have this like deep trusting on it.
mhm,
And I think that's something that a lot of us in this, especially energy healing type of work, can struggle with. I think a lot of people probably do. And that sense of, again, how are they reacting, right? Are you feeling where, like, I do know someone who really struggles with, I'm worried that they're not going to get anything of it and then I'm going to feel like a fraud, right? And you know,
mhm,
that's definitely a big one. Like, and I think that does kind of fit in with that 8 energy. I
yeah,
want to be able to fix it, if they didn't get anything, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, you know? And that's kind of into the worthiness aspect of it as well. I could definitely see connection with threes and a lot of
Yeah.
numbers.
You know, I personally love to feel it. When
Do
I'm
you?
doing
Yeah.
my own healing, I love to feel it. I feel like for me, I'm able to transmute it. I don't want to say quicker, but it's almost like quicker. But when I feel it, it amplifies what is going on. What is this memory? What is this healing? And I love to sit with it while it burns out and it clears away. For me, it does feel so satisfying to sit in those emotions and to like work through them. Then, like Lauren, how you say, bring it to me once it's done, which I totally get. For me, it's like I need to feel it. And then when I go back to that memory, back to that situation or whatever it is, it feels good. It no longer
Yeah.
feels sad or
You'd be a
painful.
fun client.
Yeah. Totally, totally. So one other thing we haven't talked about yet was about how the eights have the gift of sight,
Yeah.
right? That clairvoyant energy, which it's so funny. How many people sit in front of me and I'm like, do you realize you have the gift of sight? They're like, yeah, like doesn't everybody? And I'm like, no, not everybody does, you know, but like what a beautiful gift to tap into. Because it's not just you can see like right when we think of clairvoyance, we think I see your grandparent who has crossed over and they're telling me X, Y, and Z. Being clairvoyant is also feeling the energy. It's also knowing something. It's also being able to know the future and what comes your way. And like what a beautiful gift to have, whether you realize what you have or not. Just having that ability is so wonderful. And it brings so much clarity. And I love that because it really ties into discernment too, where you're able to discern better with that good versus bad or that light versus dark, which I think is a thing for everybody. There's nobody that's got all the answers and knows,
Agreed.
you know? So yeah, I definitely don't subscribe to that.
And, you know, speaking of that site, because I'm someone where like my clairvoyance is not, I always think of it as like one of my lower clairs, right? Because I think of myself as more claircognizant, that clear knowing, clairsentient, that clear feeling. But like the actual clairvoyance, like sighted, right? I've always like struggled more with the visuals. And through divine healing, I've seen certainly progress in that. And so I think it's, you know, fitting that here I have eights in karma. So it's in my common use name, physical karma and physical talent, right? So sometimes I really do feel like it is a manifestation of as you clear things, that gift will open, but it wasn't one that came quite as easily unlocked. But like Yiannah is saying, like really sometimes we get too caught up in this specific sense and that's all these things, and you know your gifts are coming up in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of that clear seeing in terms of I can really see this situation for what it is, or I can see beyond the immediacy. So in a job that I had, we used like strength finders as like one of those personality type tests. And I was the only person in out of our whole kind of group of maybe like 25, 30 people to have this strength at all in my top 5. And it was my number 1 and it was futuristic. So it's that sense of like kind of looking to the future, able to sort of see into the future, not psychically in that sense, but just to really think about, okay, well, what's happening now? If we were to continue on to this path, where do we end up? Right. That kind of futuristic, and it like someone who actually is coming to mind for me in this moment is like Octavia Butler, right? So like oh my goodness, what's the book? The sower, the parable of the sower. There we go. I got there. But people really talk about her as she was one of these authors, and there are many who do this, right? Where they're kind of being like, okay, this is the times I'm living in. If certain of these behaviors don't go unchecked in society, you know, on that collective level, here's the direction I see us going. And, you know, there are so many authors that I think write kind of dystopian as a way of being like, let's all see where we're going and let's make a change so that we don't actually end up there, you know? And
Like
so I
the
think
like the
there's
Handmaid's
that
Tale.
ability. Yeah. And well, Margaret Atwood has even said, I've never written anything that isn't
Yes.
true and hasn't happened.
Or
It's
isn't
just,
true or can't happen.
no, she doesn't write anything that hasn't already happened
Yeah, I mean, like,
somewhere.
no, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
I actually stopped watching that
I
show
couldn't even start.
because I was, you know what, don't. And it is a beautiful show. It has been created and put together so well, but it is very depressing when you're like, I can totally see that happening.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, thank you. Not in my reality. I do not allow that. Just like scary horror movies. I'm like, no, thanks. I don't need to bring that into my consciousness. That is not going to happen. That is not for
Right.
me. No, thank you. Because it is absolutely crazy, that show. Oof.
I agreed.
Yeah, no, no thanks.
I'm like, I haven't watched it either, but I did read the book. And
Oh
yeah.
my God, you guys.
Of course you did, Lauren.
It's wild. Okay, is there anything else we want to say about the eights before we wrap up?
I think we need to give a little bit more into what the talent of this is, because we really did talk a lot about how difficult it is,
Yes.
you know, and I think you mentioned it a little bit, Yiannah, you did, about it being a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, as much as the eights in their challenge, they do not want to integrate into society, right? They kind of pull back, right? Because they don't want to be here. So they pull back from integrating. That's where they call it the commitment issues come from. But what is beautiful about this number is that in its talent, it is the most relatable
Yes.
of the energies. They can
Yes.
relate to anybody, and that's why you call them the chameleon. And, you know, they're just able to get along with any group of people, right? Change their colors and get along with wherever they're at. And so it's so beautiful. And if you have sevens and eights together, and like they're each your talents or through that overlay, I mean, talk about a social butterfly, because the seven loves to network. The seven is the life of the party, and the eights are just so relatable. So
Yeah.
this is kind of the like Miss Popularity energy combo when you have them together, unlocked, either natural talent or you've worked through it. It is so beautiful, so grounded, so relatable. You know, again, when it's really being embodied, you are very in your body. You're very connected into your emotion. As Yiannah talked about, you're ready to feel those feelings. We got to give a little bit, I think, a little
Yeah,
bit more love of what's to come.
they also have eights in embodied eights also have a high emotional intelligence too. So you're not over emotional and you can see the situation for what it is clearly, you know?
And you
Yeah.
have good boundaries. You know how to ask for help when you need it. You know when to not offer help if you're not really prepared to give it,
Yeah,
right? If
meeting
you're
people where
like,
they're
I'm
at.
at empty, I can't do it today. I'm sorry. Man, I'm really jealous of, like, honestly, the eights who are like in it with their boundaries. I'm still working on that. I'm
Yeah.
still getting there.
You know, and then
I've made a
also
lot of progress.
that whole relatability thing, it's also about relating into your community. Get yourself out there. Get like do like those meetups for whatever it is that you love doing. Maybe it's art, maybe spirituality, reading, music, whatever it is. Find people in your community that enjoy those same passions and
Yeah.
like kind of immerse yourself in that. And that will really help ground you into society and bring out all those beautiful qualities of the eight, because the eights, yeah, they're, who doesn't want an eight around who can be social with them, who can be comforting and loving and like can reciprocate those things? Like, I'll take that all day long as an eight.
I know. I love the eight energy. 8
Yeah.
and 4. That's
Yeah.
my favorite.
It's great.
It is.
It's a really good
Yeah.
one. And
Yeah.
it's really good when people are optimizing their names as well, because of that grounded energy. It can often be really, really helpful when
Yeah.
people are changing their names. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you let
Oh,
our listeners know where to find you?
yes. So, in person, I in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, and you can get a hold of me through my email. It's Kellyklaras, Kellyklaras @gmail.com.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And
Yeah,
you're
it's been fun.
available for soul contracts, divine healing, and then just tell us again your in-person modalities.
In-person modalities would be even divine healings in person too. I have done some groups and some in person with that. I do massage, I do Reiki, I do light language, CrainoSacral, SomatoEmotional Release, massage therapy.
I love it. Can I just come for like a spa day with you?
You can come for
just
a
like
well,
stay all day.
Lauren,
I know.
remember the retreat? We'll be at the
Yeah.
retreat.
Yeah, we got to make that happen. It's gonna
Gotta
happen.
make that happen.
This
Let's
is,
put
I
it
think,
out there.
that second, third mention, baby. You know, we're working our way. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, head over to
Thank you.
Instagram. Let us know what you thought of this week's episode, the Let's Talk Vibes podcast. And if you would like to book a reading with Yiannah or myself, head over to our website, theltvpodcast.com.
And as always, everybody, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our content. It is the best way to support our show. And we thank you and appreciate you so much. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye.
Oh, thank
Bye.
you.